Hi, and welcome to our first interview in the interview series, Creating a Life That Nourishes Body and Soul. Today, we're talking to Lynda Malka, who is a mindset coach. Starting with her because mindset is such a critical piece to lay the foundation for any change that we want to make. We have to first have the mindset that's going to take us there. So, we're going to dive into some really interesting things and some helpful ideas to help us get our mindset where it needs to be to make the changes that we want to make. Also, a key thing to remember with mindset, and we're having a lot of interviews on a lot of topics. This is not a do all of this stuff to have a life that's nourishing body and soul, because that would be a bit much and that defeats the purpose. The
Yeah.
purpose of this is to just hear different aspects and listen to what might speak to you to focus on currently, knowing
Yeah.
that life is not a race and we don't need to have everything doing it and being it right now. So that's part of the mindset piece, which Lynda will help us with today. So welcome, Lynda.
Thank you. So
And
great to be here with you, Tracy.
I'm so happy that you're here too, Lynda. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little bit about Lynda. She's a certified mindset and life coach who helps women break free from limitations and step into their God-given purpose. With a dynamic background in education and entrepreneurship, she blends strategy, intuition, and faith to guide her clients toward lasting transformation. Her journey of healing and self-discovery began after a difficult divorce, an experience that taught her the power of resilience, self-worth, and trusting in God's plan. She discovered firsthand that true breakthrough happens when you embrace your divine gifts and own your value. Now, Lynda is passionate about helping others do the same. Whether you're ready to silence self doubt, cultivate self empowerment, or step boldly into your calling, she's here to guide you toward a life of confidence, purpose, and fulfillment. And she's a good woman for the job.
Thank
So,
you.
Lynda, tell us, we got a little taste of what your story is that led you to this, going
Mhm.
through your divorce, but tell
Yeah.
us a little bit more about your story and what formed your beliefs and your strategies in mindset coaching.
Well, as you mentioned, it started with the divorce, and in the healing from that, I realized that I settled for somebody who was totally wrong for me. And, his trauma response kind of leaned towards some abusive behaviors. But I realized I chose him because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. And I definitely didn't value myself enough to hold out and wait for something that was more suited to me, for someone that was more suited to me. And so I really set myself up for a difficult life. I felt I lived a life where I was masking different masks for different situations, right? Because I didn't know how to show up because I didn't know who I was. And I was also dimming my light because I didn't think who I was would be acceptable to anyone, partly based on the situation I was living in with my ex-husband, and partly because I just had not stepped fully into who I was. So then I met Brenda Byers, who was a business coach who was creating a certified life coach program. That's where I started to become a life coach. I took her program in exchange for my services, right? And then during quarantine times, I took a self-belief workshop and I went, oh, this is gold. This stuff is gold. So when she offered a mindset coaching program, I'm like, I got to do this because it helped me so much to realize where I was shrinking and hiding instead of fully authentically being who I was, and where that was actually stopping me from fulfilling what I was really born to do and created to do, right? So I decided, like, I'm going to do this because I can't be the only one that is living life this way.
And I think that's a real key thing because I think a lot of women struggle with that. But how might we recognize? Because it sounds like it took you a little while to recognize that you were settling, that you didn't actually know yourself well enough to know what you needed and what you could do. So if somebody finds himself in that situation, do you have suggestions for, or maybe just your experience of how you started to see that so that you could then move forward?
It well, it I got to a place where I was done bargaining. I was done trading off me for
Mhm.
everybody's else's happiness, because what the end result was that everyone around me was content and happy and I was miserable. And so if you find yourself in that place, it really is an indicator that you are showing up for everybody else and not leading with yourself first. Because we can't give out of an empty tank.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Well,
think
that's
too.
what this workshop is about, right?
Yeah, yes. I think too that it's important to not get stuck. Sometimes if we're feeling like that, it's easy to turn outward and blame, to blame that husband, to blame that job, to blame whatever for our unhappiness.
Uh-huh.
Um,
For God.
so talk about that for a little bit if you would.
Well, here's what I realized. Before I got into all of these situations, before I married who I married the first time, I had a lot of red flares going off, right? And I kept going, oh, look at the fireworks. Aren't they pretty? Right? But there were definitely things that were coming up that I would stop for a second and go, I don't know if I'm okay with that. And then he would explain it away, and I'd be like, oh, okay. But in your gut, if we start to tune into our body, my gut knew something was not lining up here, right? And so that I was creating messes and going, God, fix it. And God is going, no, babe, I sent you the red flares. I sent you all the warning signs. You went into the minefield anyway. You need to find your way out. I'll walk it with you, though, right?
Yeah, that's where your
Here,
lesson is.
right? This is part of learning. This is part of understanding that our choices have end results, and those end results are ours as well, right? And that's so you're right. I can't blame it all on him. I made the choice willingly to walk into a place where I knew instinctively, I don't know if this is really for me.
And it's important to, when we do that, that we not blame ourselves either. If we can get past the point of blaming other people, that's wonderful. But if that blame then turns toward us, that's a problem. It's just a matter of being willing to learn and go, oh, I see now. And
Mhm.
let's move on from here because the blame game doesn't serve anybody.
It does not. And it's about giving grace and forgiveness to yourself as well as them. Yeah, no, grace is unearned, unmerited favor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you know you didn't earn it,
Mm-hmm.
and you know you got yourself into the minefield, but it's okay. You didn't know it was a minefield,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and it's part of our growth and progress as people.
Amen to that, sister. And it's so true.
So, Linda, what are some of the biggest struggles that you see people facing in this area?
In mindset, a lot of times the biggest struggles that I see are that, well, number one, women, we're raised to be people pleasers, right? We're raised to be caretakers. We're raised to put other people first. And so we have some things that we have to unlearn. We
Mm-hmm.
don't stop it completely, right? We still get to lovingly choose to serve the people that we care about. Um, and we also need to be aware of when it's compromising some of our core values, right? And so when we are people pleasers, it can create a fear of judgment. Oh, did I do that right? Did I not do that? Is that okay? Da, 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 right? Or overthinking and compromising. And who can move forward with that anchor,
Yeah.
right? So it's really huge that we start to become aware of our core values, our core beliefs, who we are, and how that is meant to serve and bless the world. Because a lot of times, if we're not clear on what that is, they're more than happy to tell you,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because we people, human beings, by and large, we love to get our needs met. We do. We just don't sometimes realize that a lot of that job is our own.
Yeah.
It's not up to other people. So if you have people in your world that haven't gotten to that growth step yet, they're looking to you to solve it, right? And sometimes that's the most loving thing we can do is go, I love you, and this one's on you.
Yeah. 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 So, what unique strategies or insights do you bring to the table that could offer a fresh perspective for people?
Well, I heard this a long time ago and I really love incorporating it. And that is when something comes up for us, what timeline is it on? Like if you're triggered on something, for example, if you know me long enough, you'll hear me say that I'm math is my growth area because I used to say, I don't do math. I can't do math because when I was in sixth grade, I had a teacher when I was sick for like 2 weeks, couldn't do homework, so sick. And I came back to school and the teacher called on me for an answer. Well, I hadn't done any of the work. And she was like, see, class, this is what happens when you don't do your homework. You end up stupid. So my brain connected math and stupid,
Oh
right?
my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, this is what our brain does, right? It makes these weird connections, and you're not aware of them until I went to get a job, and I wanted this job because this job was going to actually be on my own timing. I was working with independent study students, and I could create my own schedule. Uh, and I had to pass an algebra test to get it. So, so I realized, wow, I realized at that point the power of words. Thoughts and words create. They always create. So we need to be mindful of what they're creating. Well, I was creating in my brain the story that I can't do math. Do you think I was going to pass that test like ever? No. So I started telling myself math is my growth area. It might take me a little longer to do math than other people, but I can do math and I can get the same answer that they do, right?
Mhm.
So when we start to become aware of what we're creating and the stories that are going on in our head and realizing, okay, that was that timeline then, but my timeline now doesn't say that I'm dumb and stupid at math. I can do math, right? And that happens with so many issues with us in our day and our mindset.
Mhm.
Um, One of the other things is triggers, right? Triggers are the thing that tell us that is a growth area. Triggers indicate there's something there. There's a root there that either needs to be healed when we're ready or identified as, is that still an issue now? Like I said in the timeline, does it belong in my here and now or does it belong back there and it can stay back there, right? Unless I
Mhm.
haven't healed it. And then that's a decision and a readiness factor. Um, and then the other thing is, learning steps to calm it in the moment. Because if we're triggered, let's say if we're out to a networking thing and somebody says something that triggers us, it's not the time to number one, deal with it and dig into it and all of that. It's not the time. So we need to figure out some quick things that we can do to just calm ourselves. Breath calms us, right? Rubbing your hands together, doing those kind of things. So I provide some real simple formulas for, okay, how do we deal with it in the here and now? And then how do we deal with it long term?
When we are just feeling that discomfort, like if there's just too much, we're feeling like we're kind of being drained by the life that we're living because we're busy. You want to talk a little bit about time frame? Because I think sometimes you get this idea, it feels like such a big thing to make this mindset shift that it's like, I don't have time for that. I don't have 3 hours to sit and meditate.
Mhm.
That's not my
Yeah,
life. So,
yeah.
what about somebody who's feeling that kind of pressure that I really don't have time to do this?
And honestly, on some big things, that might be true,
Mm.
right? That to fully dig into it, that might be true. The mindset coach that I did my training with said it's often a decision. It's a decision maybe to decide to start to dismantle this, or it's a decision to get out the excavator and fully like, let's just get it over with and rip off the band-aid and deal with it, right? Um, but and it's different for everyone, right? Because it depends on how long you've been carrying these things, but often it's to me, it's a decision. Um, so God is telling me to give you this analogy that he gave me, which is because I think I gave you the title, It All Starts in the Garden.
Mm.
The reason I gave you that is because I was thinking about this podcast. I was like, Lord, what do you want me to talk about? And he said, you know, I really want you to tell everyone that I created my people like a garden. And there are all different kinds of flowers. There are all different kinds of plants. By the way, plant life was the third thing God created, right? And he said, oftentimes someone in the garden can look to their left and they can see the most beautiful rose bush, all of these beautiful red roses, and they're thinking, someday I'm going to have red roses just like that. I'm going to be so amazing and so gorgeous. And he says they're missing the fact that I made them a daffodil. They are never, ever, ever going to have red roses. And that red rose, it does provide a beauty to my garden, but it also has thorns. The daffodil is the harbinger of spring. It's the very first flowers that provide beauty in the beginning of spring. Everything has a season. Every single one of us has a season. And if we don't honor that season, or if we want to sit there and take some roses and go, "Hey, I'm a rose bush now," which is what we do when we wear masks, right?
Hmm.
It's not a lasting situation. It's not a lasting fix, right? It's not the way that God created us to be. And often in that garden too, there are weeds. Like I'm gonna call the things that trigger us or these growth areas, some of them are weeds. And those weeds, if we choose not to deal with them ever, are gonna eventually choke us out. Right? They'll cut off our light, they'll cut off our water supply, they'll cut off everything. So we do eventually at some point need to deal with them. But I don't know about you, but sometimes if I see a daffodil and I pull it out and I don't get the root, I know I'm gonna have to go back and deal with that later. But at least I can like pull out the root and like on the surface I can function, right? It looks good for a minute until we have to go back to that. So, and then the other thing that God told me is remember bark or weed block, right? Those are our boundaries. If we don't get super good at setting boundaries, we're still going to be choked out by weeds,
Hmm.
right? And so that to me, those to me were powerful messages, and they're huge mindset messages that we often miss because we 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 pull the daffodil up or the dandelion up and we don't actually deal with what's underneath the surface, but it's still growing
Yeah.
and it's going to come up maybe in a cluster somewhere else.
So it sounds like two things. It sounds like this takes a lot of faith in, you know, recognizing that we're a daffodil, not a rose, and letting that be okay.
Yes.
And not letting, the florist may tell you that roses are better because they're more expensive, they make more money off them, and they're more popular for lots of flower arrangements. And so the world may be telling us that roses are better, but recognizing that God says we're a daffodil and we can do the most good if we just allow ourselves to be a daffodil. So that
Yeah,
takes a kind of faith to
it
be able
it
to do that.
does. Yeah, it does. And actually, and because I used to call myself a late bloomer, and then I realized I'm a right bloomer. Like I'm blooming right when I'm supposed to, but I'm like, Lord, what kind of flower would I be? And he's like, you're an amaryllis. Well, we know amaryllises are like towards November, December. They're still very amazing flowers, right? Um, because I'm not a rose and I'm not a daffodil. Should I feel bad about that? No,
Mhm.
because I wasn't meant to be those things. I'm meant to be who I am.
Mhm.
And it does take faith in that, but it takes faith just like Peter climbing out of the boat and walking on water, right?
Mhm.
And the only reason he doesn't sink when he starts to sink, what did he do? He took his eyes off God.
Mhm.
God is the only one that's going to be able to show us who we are and what we are. And sometimes that's by closing doors, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah, and you mentioned the bark and the weed blocker being boundaries. And
Yeah.
that's a can be kind of a delicate topic because boundaries are, if we have lived in a way where we're not setting appropriate boundaries,
Yeah.
it can be difficult to learn how to do that. And a difficult part of that can be how to deal with other people and them responding us to us now setting boundaries. Because if we haven't set them before and we start setting them,
Yeah.
they're not
It's
going to
not,
like it.
yeah, get ready for the explosion.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So how do we deal with that?
You know, you're gonna it with my first husband setting, he plowed through any boundary I set. So everything that I did that was a no-go for me was through the side door. Like if I went through this is a network marketing analogy, right? That sometimes when we approach people, some people you can go through the front door and say, "Hey, here's what I have to offer, blah blah blah." And they'll go, "Great, thank you." And some people slam the door in your face, right? With that situation, I would get a slam door in my face. But if I went in the side door and I said, "Hey, well, we might kind of, oh, what's the problem here? What do you think the solution is? Oh, I heard this or this. Do you think that might work?" And then it's his idea, then it's all good, right? So sometimes we have to figure out a workaround, right? Some people might say that's a bit manipulative. It's survival. In certain situations, it's flat out survival, right?
Mhm.
So then the other thing is keep yourself safe. So walk away. I know
Mhm.
you don't like it. I'm sorry you don't like it. So there's some things that we can do to soften the blow, but you're right, it's going to be a blow to some people. And we need to like armor up with the armor of God and Lord, I'm going in and cover me type of things because at first they're not going to like it.
Mhm.
And what are their options? Like they eventually have to accept it, right?
Yeah, and it can feel most likely they will throw at you that you're being selfish, that you're being
Mhm.
self-centered. And that can be something, again, most of us are raised not to be that way.
Yeah,
Recognize that we don't want to be selfish and self-centered, but that's not what this is. This is personal boundaries. This is respecting ourselves and helping others to respect us as well.
exactly. And that comes first by loving and accepting ourselves, right? And
Mhm.
knowing I'm worth this. I'm worth this.
Yeah. So, what are two or three actionable steps that people can take to begin finding better balance?
Number one, like I said, identifying the roots. Identify the roots of beliefs that are no longer serving you and lovingly let those things go, right?
Hmm.
Um, you'll hear people all the time. I don't know about you, but I do in the circles I travel. I'm a recovering people pleaser.
Hmm.
I used to be a people pleaser, right?
Hmm.
Because they realize if they keep referring to themselves as a people pleaser, their brain goes, "Oh yeah, that's what we do." Right?
Hmm.
So we have to, so starting to make some different choices and some different words that create different outcomes. What we create creates. So if we're using high frequency words and feeling high frequency emotions, love and happiness and joy and all of those things, we're going to draw in more of those things. And if we're down here in the fears and shames, we're going to draw more of that in. So becoming aware of what's playing, and oftentimes the stories, the voices, the I call them the gremlins, they're like muted almost. We almost don't hear them, but they are playing in the background and they are dictating some of our choices. And that's why it's so important that we flip the script and we reframe some of those things once we start to realize they're limiting beliefs, right? Um, we have a mentor and a coach who will tell you write the negative one or the limiting belief and then rewrite an affirming belief and cross the other one out with a red pen like teacher.
Hmm.
Um, so that those kind of things are important. And then also taking action, right? Like Peter, get out of the boat, take the first step. Indiana Jones movie, right? He's on the ledge and there's this big chasm and he's like, oh gosh. And he just steps out and the path appears,
Hmm.
right? And so some of the things, some of the times developing that actionable mindset means we take action and it actually results in something that is growth for us, that is in the area that we want to go in, right? And sometimes even if it isn't, we trust that God's going to use all things for our good. And so even if it feels like, I think I said to you, it feels like the shopping mall where we're going zigzagging all around instead of straight to Sears for the thing that we need, right? There's a reason for it. It's maybe learning the layout, learning the map, learning something. There is a reason that comes from some of the things that feel like these side trips for us.
Mhm. Yeah. Do you have a personal mantra or scripture or guiding principle that helps you stay on track in this area?
I it's probably a verse that a lot of people have, but my foundational verse when I was going through all of the divorce stuff was Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, not to harm you, but to give you hope in a future,
Mm.
right? So, because for the longest time, I was like, okay, Lord, where were you? Like I was
Yeah.
paying child support and alimony for 2.5 years. What? It, God has a plan. And just because it doesn't happen immediately for me, it happens and it happens in his timing and it's far better than what I could hope for, right? And so that is one of the things that I just keeping in mind, that one in the Romans 8:28, the one that says God uses all things for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. All things, not just some of the things that we experience or encounter, but all things.
Hmm. And I think an important part of this too is not only trusting God in this to that, we're a daffodil or an amaryllis, that we can trust him, that we're created the way we're supposed to be, but also I I have found for myself that a lot of um I have been trained in many ways to not trust myself. And so
Mhm.
we can feel in that training to be a people pleaser, it also encourages us not to trust ourselves because we're so focused on what everybody else needs, what everybody else thinks, that we don't trust that we're worth putting on that list to consider as well,
Yeah.
or B, that we deserve the consideration, that we trust ourselves to make the decision, that it's not a selfish decision, it's just a personal boundary that I need to set, that kind of thing, that we have some trust that we need to rebuild in ourselves in
Mhm.
this process. You want to speak to that a little bit?
What actually came to mind is feeling it in the body.
Mm,
When we go ahead, when we go along to get along, we're going to feel a tightness in our chest. We're going to feel like our hackles rising because we're like, I so don't want to do this. Now I have to do this. You know, um, when we actually take a minute, and here's a big one. So we as people pleasers, recovering people pleasers, trained people pleasers, right? We sometimes feel like we immediately have to jump to it, right? We have to take care of it right now, do it, da, 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 da. And so one of the biggest things is learning to pause for a minute, learning to respond, learning. So if somebody invites you to something and you're really not sure you want to go, just give it a minute. Say, you know what, I'll get back to you on that. You don't have to immediately say yes or no. You don't have to immediately commit. And then sit with it and feel it. Do I want to go? Do you get excited about thinking about doing the thing? Or do you get all tightened up in hackles and, oh, I really don't want to do the thing? That those kind of actions go a long way to being able to trust ourselves. It first starts in our body. We need to pay attention to how we're physically feeling because our emotions show up physically.
mhm,
And we need to pay attention to maybe the words that we're saying connected to certain things, right? And a big part of that is like once you make these decisions, and let's say you make a decision and it doesn't go the way that you thought it would, were you able to figure out a way out of it, right? So we have 100% success rate at surviving everything we've been to this point. So why wouldn't we trust ourselves?
I love that thought. I still remember the first time I read that somewhere. It's like,
Yes.
that's true. 100%
Yes.
success rate in getting through things.
I'm still here.
That's not going to change.
No, it's not because we have God on our side.
Yeah.
So even if we muck up big time and do the zigzag, he'll be like, it's still over here. It's It's waiting for you, right?
Yeah,
Right?
he's bigger and wiser and much more powerful than we are.
Seriously.
So Lynda, you have a free offering for everybody who's registered, and then you also have a VIP offering for those who purchased or will purchase the VIP package. You want to tell us about those?
Yeah. So my free offering for everyone is a little ebook that I have that's called Unstuck and Unstoppable. Three steps to break free and move forward. It's easier to do than it is for me to say it. But it's got some actionable items in there, some a little bit of journaling. I take you through a few little exercises to kind of help you drop into the body and get grounded in yourself, right? So that's that. And then for my VIP offering, I'm offering a 60-minute mindset reset strategy plus 1 month of membership access to Created to Bloom Vault, which is my digital company. So it's a virtual assisting digital company that I have helped create with a friend who we our goal is to support women and especially women entrepreneurs. So there's some prayer journals in there, there's some Bible studies, there's some business development tools, there's some PLR stuff, which means they can rebrand it with their stuff and use it moving forward. So that's there as well. Yeah.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. And now let's finish with my favorite question. To you, Lynda, what are one, two, three of the things that you feel are most integral to creating a life that nourishes body and soul?
Number one, I think that we need to connect with God. And sometimes for me, connecting with God means I get out in nature and I ground
Mm,
and I connect with his creation and him that way, right? So in addition to, you know, waking up in the morning, I listen to Christian music, I do some journaling. I inevitably at some time during the day I get outside and I'll either garden or I'll get my feet in the dirt in the grass if it's warm enough outside. But either way, I believe that the plants absorb what we don't need and they make something beautiful with it. So I do that. And that also helps to balance us, I think, right? And then the other thing I love to do is I love to create.
mm,
When I need just some downtime, when I need to shift gears, I love to create cards. I have, so I'm a typical teacher. So anytime I get into any hobby, I collect the whole shebang. So I got drawers of stamps and stamp pads and scissors and paper, all that kind of stuff. So I love to do stuff like that to just shift me into a different perspective, get my brain off of the other spinny stuff, the business stuff, the whatever stuff that's taken my time and taking stuff away. And it just settles my system,
mm,
right? It gets me into a different mode. And that creativity actually just blossoms out to everything I touch and everybody I encounter because it's a happy place for me.
mhm,
And that may not be other people's happy place. They might be, oh Lordy, don't put me there. But they have their own happy place of
mhm,
where they like to be, right?
mhm.
So I
I
mean,
think creativity is a real key thing. We didn't actually have an interview coming up on creativity and its role in creating this enriching and fulfilling life.
yeah.
But too, it's like people hear creative and they think, oh, drawing and painting and singing and playing music. And we have this very narrow definition of what creativity is. But you know what? My daughter can create the most beautiful spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And so there, all of us have that creative spark in us. It takes different forms.
And everybody has that. They just need to figure out what it is because is such a nurturing thing for us.
Mhm, mhm. I mean, following in the footsteps of God, who is the great creator. We're his children. We're
Yeah.
naturally creative. We're like him.
That is so good. Exactly. I love that.
So, well, thank you so much, Lynda. I really appreciate you being here and appreciate your time and laying this foundation, talking about mindset and its role in being able to make the changes that we want to make, to recognize the changes that we want to make, that we're really feeling drawn to. and being able to get our mindset where it needs to be able to
Yeah.
make those changes. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here, Tracy. I really appreciate it. I love to just get out there and connect with everybody who might need a little help in this area like I did.
Mhm. And thank you all for listening in our first interview and many more to come in a series that will hopefully help you to create a life that truly nourishes you, body and soul.
Yeah.